he has always been so good with dramatics. So animated when telling stories. His eyes would get so wide, and he's just, he's been really good at engaging the audience, the listener. So I loved that as a kid. That's something that I have always appreciated about Dad. He's happy to make people laugh, even if he was, the butt of the joke sometimes growing up, but he was good at just taking it in stride. And that's not something that comes easily to me, but I've gotten better the older I get. And I think it helps looking to, those examples before me to just shake off things that don't matter and just laugh along.
I just really appreciate all that he has done for me. I love a lot of the funny little quotes. Once heard him once or twice say, I ask for so little and I get it, or first rule of parenting, always go. No, I got that wrong. First rule of youth activities, always go back with who brought you. The first rule of parenting was leave well enough alone. Put some ice on it. That was, we laugh about it, but it was definitely a thing growing up. Is it your hamstring? Is it your shoulder? Is it, put some ice on it, that'll help. I just love a lot of his aphorisms.
Probably some of the biggest lessons he's taught us are around obedience, around hard work, and around prioritizing God in your life. Those have been very important lessons.
Do your duty. You have a responsibility, and if it's yours, then you do it, and you do it to the best of your ability. A big portion of that is teaching us how to work. You can't do your duty unless you know how to work. And Dad was a big proponent of that we had to be working. And we need to be working from the time that we were little.
Like, there's a priority scale for him. It was very clear where you had the gospel and church responsibilities, and then he had us as a family, and he had work. When he goes to work at like 8:30 in the morning and doesn't come home till like 6, and he gets home, eats a quick dinner, then leaves to go to some church meeting, and then he'll get home at 8 or 9. And then looks over maybe some slides or material that he has to teach for a lesson the next day, or he calls and talks to somebody that needs something from him.
He has such a great work ethic, and to me it's at the point I have a hard time sitting still. I think, we all need breaks once in a while, but if it's a day where I go to work, yeah, I know I'm going to be working for more than 12 hours, but if it's a non-work day, I can't just, wake up and take it easy and, check social media, check my email, just, watch random videos. I just can't do that. I just think about Dad's example and how, no, there's a lot to be done.
Every year in the summer, when we had the old swamp cooler, that's the only air conditioning that we had for the whole time that we were growing up. Mom and Dad didn't get air conditioning in until after I had left the house. Every year, we would go up and do the same thing. We'd go up onto the top of the blazing hot roof, in the sun, and we'd take it apart. Half the time, there'd probably be a hornet's nest in the little plastic enclosure. Replace the pad. We cleaned it all out. Every single year, and I remember being so hot up there on those roofs and so uncomfortable. And when you would we had this little wooden ladder that would go from the first level of the roof to the top level, and then you'd step up on that, which half the rungs were broken anyway. You would put your hands on top of the shingles on the roof, and it'd be so hot that you couldn't leave them there. You just have to kind of move them around and then scramble up onto the top part. When you were a little kid, you had to go up onto your waist and then roll real quick so you didn't really burn. And we did that every summer. That wasn't the only example of him teaching us how to work. We would be mowing the lawns. We would be edging the lawns. We'd be pulling weeds. We'd be watering plants, along with all the work that we needed to do in school and everything. And so from a very early age, he taught us that we had to work. you need a good work ethic if you're really going to do what is required of you to be successful in life, in anything. And Dad was a fantastic example of that work ethic. Dad would do leisure activities with us, of course, and it was fun, and he would play games with us. He would watch games with us, but we worked hard, and he required that we worked hard, and we would pay the price if we didn't. But I'm so grateful, that we did.
He's always led by example. Always, always, always. I remember, without being too specific, talking about obedience, being in the temple with Dad, and how he followed every instruction to the letter in the exact order that it was mentioned. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I mean, it probably doesn't matter what order we follow it in for specific situations in there. But he said, and I kind of asked him about it. I was like, oh, hey, you forgot to do this. He's like, no, that's coming after this specific, other action. That little response from him that was like, oh, you know what? When there's a question, when you could go either way, when there's a gray area, you might as well go in the direction of being obedient, to the extent possible, to the extent that you can. And yes, he never provided any doubt to us that he was as obedient as he possibly could to God's commandments. That has stuck with me a lot.
Commitment to your responsibilities and a love of the gospel. And those he taught me most effectively through his example.
Not only the setting your proper priorities, but then being as diligent and working as hard as you are, because he's a very disciplined person. He has to have his routine and be able to accomplish what he wants to accomplish and stay disciplined with, everything. He consistently has continued to exercise all the way into his almost 70s now. Stay disciplined with, his diet, and never saw him skipping out on doing a scripture study.
Daily consistency on important things is what it takes to be successful. And Dad is a tremendous example of that in certainly church and spiritual matters, and also in things like fitness. Dad has worked very, very hard to keep himself in good shape. I mean, working out every day typically on his lunch hour or after work, and eating correctly, not just being a nutrition professor, but sacrificing so that he can eat properly and keep himself in good shape. And he's a great example to us there. And so the daily consistency of all of these good things is ultimately what leads us to have success in life. And Dad has really helped teach that lesson for all of us.
Just everything, all those small little things that aren't necessarily hard to do, but they are hard to stay consistent with and to make a habit in your life. I guess it's like the decisions that I make, and the stuff I see as goals and the things I consider important. While I've already talked about quite a few consciously, I've noticed more and more as I get older how many of them subconsciously also affect my behavior. A conscious one was like when I finally hit a wall where I started to get out of shape a little bit when I was like 24 or something, due to I had my ankle injury and I was just super busy with school and work. And then over that summer and working, like at the end of the summer, I was just like, man, I'm so out of shape, and it was horrible. And then in the winter, how I got back into exercising, and now I've gotten way into it. But clearly it was easy to see that as a priority because of Dad doing it as much as he did growing up.
When we drove up, I think Dan and I were in the car with him. It was actually when we drove back from Brittany's wedding, our cousin. This was before any of us had gotten married. And on the car ride back, he explained to us the experience that he had when marrying Mom, and how he had prayed and prayed and prayed for a spiritual manifestation that Mom was the right one, and how he had prayed and prayed and didn't feel like he had gotten that concrete answer that she was the right person for him to marry. and how like he tried to set it up the perfect scenario where he went on a walk and the sun was just rising at, in the beginning of the beginning of the day. He mentioned to us as we were driving, like, looking back on it, God knew that I knew, and God was trying to tell me that I don't need an answer for something that's all obviously right in front of my face. Mom was a wonderful and is a wonderful person. We had the same, priorities and the same ideals, and I distinctly feel like I had known all along that this was the right choice for me to make, and that God didn't necessarily need to come down and tell me that this was the right person in order for me to move forward with it. And I have tried to apply that in my life as well. That yes, you don't need an answer to every single question if it's something that we can use our own experiences and our own talents that God has given us to figure out.
It was so normal for me, and probably for all of us, to view that as just like a regular thing with how busy he was with the church, and just like, yeah, when you're just an older adult, you just get involved with that stuff. But a lot of people don't, because they don't want it to take up their time. But he was asked to fulfill that role, and he understood how important it was, and so he rose to the occasion.
I also like his example in studying the scriptures. He always did that. Usually it was one of the things he did early in the morning. And so wanting to study is a lesson that I take with me, and I still try to do that.
Dad's commitment to the gospel is a wonderful example to all of us, and him being up early studying scriptures, us doing daily prayer. And the reason I laugh is because Dad finding a ridiculous way to decide who would say our family prayer at the end of every day. Typically some variation of reverse alphabetical middle names, or something equally ridiculous.
I have a lot of memories of Dad getting choked up when he feels the Spirit in particular with spiritual matters, and also just when he has found a story touching. And that's something that I've appreciated, that he's able to cry when he feels things genuinely and deeply. As a very sensitive person, it's something that I think sometimes makes me feel embarrassed when I cry easily, but it's almost that Dad in action showed that that's okay. That's just how some are wired, and it's an acceptable way of being. So I appreciated that.
Talking about Dad's role in my life, he has been the anchor to whom I always have been able to feel comfortable going if I have doubts, spiritually related, or if I have questions that are related to the gospel. I know that Dad will not treat it lightly, that he will take the time to answer my questions and to provide his unique perspective to it. There was a time in my life, probably the most difficult trial that I have faced in my life, when I was talking to him on the phone. He was trying to reassure me when I had made some stupid decisions. And he said, look, Ike, I realize that you've made some mistakes, but I'm confident that you will get through this. And there's a specific talk that I have read recently, from General Conference, that we want no empty chairs, meaning that, if you're in heaven and there's a gathering of chairs, or like a circle of chairs where all the family is sitting, that yours won't be empty. When he mentioned that to me, it helped me to get through that trial.
Also, serving in the church. when I was on a mission, he sent an email one time where he talked about how he's always felt like he needs to give his all for the Lord, how he's always wanted to serve the very best he can in whatever calling he's given. That's something I always take with me, in the callings I've been given, including the one I have now as a ward missionary. I really want to do the best that I can.
He's taught me to be a trustworthy and a dedicated servant. I'm not at the level that he is, and I don't think I ever will be, but I do want to, in a similar way, be trustworthy and have people at church or at work be able to count on me when they need something, and when they give me an assignment, be able to trust that I'm going to not just give a half effort or make an excuse, but that I'll get it done and do it well. I want to be like that too.
I'm thankful for his instilling in us the need to work, the need to ensure that if you're responsible for something, you do it well. I have carried that into, my church callings. I've carried that into my career. If it's my responsibility, I need to get it done. I have to get it done, whatever it takes.
It's impressive how good he was at not letting any type of social inhibition prevent him from connecting with other people. When he would go to his, NHS meetings where he would have all the coworkers who were LDS, and they would always talk. He'd love to talk about how they'd all be so surprised about how different his life was from most of them, where of them who would be married and have kids, it would be like a few kids, and then a lot of them wouldn't be married, or if they would marry, they wouldn't have kids. He would get excited about the prospect of talking to them about, how different their lives are. And so even though they were so different, it didn't prevent him from, connecting and interacting with people.
I never for once in my life doubted that he loved me and that he wanted me to be happy. And I just hope to be able to, communicate some of those important lessons that he taught to me, to my kids as well.
I'm very grateful to have had a wonderful dad growing up and still have a wonderful dad.
Love you, Dad.